If you want to know the basics about health and safety, the ISO 45001 Occupational Health and Safety Management System standard, the structure of the standard, and how this standard helps in strengthening the health and safety at an organization, this video is for you. Let me introduce myself and then we'll get started. This is Syed Arshad Hashmi from Core System Consultant. By profession, I'm an engineer with extensive experience as consultant, trainer, and auditor for many ISO standards, including information security, business continuity, energy, quality, environment, health, and safety management standards. I've done more than 3,000 mandates of trainings and audits, and I've worked on more than 150 consulting projects with major industrial sectors across the globe. So that was a brief about myself, and now let's get started. ISO 45001 Occupational Health and Safety Management System Standard. This standard is in short called OHSMS. This is the title of the standard, and these are the contents of the standard. As you can see, there are 10 headings, and these headings are called clauses of the standard. This clauses or this headings is in a structure which is called high level structure. In short, it is called HLS. And among these headings, 4 till 10 are the headings to be focused upon because the requirements for health and safety management system are laid down between 4 till 10. These are also the clauses which are called auditable clauses. When you will be internally auditing your organization, you will be focusing on 4 till 10. And when you will be audited externally by the external agency, you will again be audited between 4 till 10. The third clause is about the terms and definitions. Some of the key definitions are, first of all, the word health. Now, the key thing that you note here is that it is the well being of the body and mind as well. So, it's not just the physical body that we are talking about. Safety, as you can easily understand, it is about the state of being safe without any sources of harm or hazard to a human. That is called safety. Hazard is anything that can harm the human, any act or situation or a source which has a potential or can harm a human, like your working conditions, mechanical hazards because of a machinery, electrical hazards, and the natural disasters, lightnings, flooding, anything that may happen because of the nature. These are all the hazards that we need to consider while establishing a health and safety management system. The other key term that you need to focus upon is called risk. It's simply explained as the probability of an unwanted or an unexpected event to occur. Here, we are going to specifically discuss the risk related to health and safety. The health and safety risks are those risks which are because of any hazards that are in the organization, in the industry, that pose a threat to the workers and the workforce that is out there. So we need to consider all those occupational health and safety risks, which is plainly defined as the likelihood of occurrence of that particular hazard and how impactful it can be and the severity of impact. That's the most plain definition for health and safety risk. Coming back to the clauses, let me take you through the clauses one by one. This is the fourth clause, which establishes the context of the organization. As you can see, there are four subclauses in it. The key things that you need to understand or the standard requires is that you need to determine what are the internal and external factors which can impact the health and safety management system of an organization. Those factors can be external factors or can be internal factors as small as a human error or machine failure or a leakage in the system, or as big as a natural disaster, a tornado, or anything from outside. So, internal and external factors that can impact, we need to consider that. We also need to consider the needs and expectations of the interested parties. Now, interested parties can be internal, can be external, especially the workers. So, it is not just the workforce. When we establish the health and safety management system, we consider all the stakeholders, internal and external, and we develop a health and safety management system to be able to satisfy the needs and expectation of all the interested parties, including our workforce. Then the standard require you to establish the scope. The scope is basically the site or the processes that you are taking for certification for which you develop the health and safety management system. So this is exactly that wording which is basically written down on any ISO certificate under the name of the organization. This is called the scope of certification. So the standard requires that to establish the scope for which you are developing this health and safety management system for. Then we have the fifth clause. The fifth clause talks about the leadership. And leadership has a key role to play in establishing the health and safety management system. Everything is driven from the top to the bottom. As you can see, there are four subclauses within. And the most important clause here is my last clause, which is 5.4 clause. And I'll just come to it in a bit. So the fifth clause requires the management to establish an organization for health and safety, define different roles and responsibilities for occupational health and safety management system, and define the policies or the top level policy, and provide all the resources that are needed to establish the health and safety management system at an organization. So standard requires that top management should be involved in establishing the health and safety management system and reviewing the performance and ensuring continual improvement. The other thing the clause 5 require is the 5.4 clause, which is about consultation and participation. So we need to understand this phenomena in 45001, that this standard will really not be workable unless the workforce is on board. So standard requires that workers or their representative, they should be part of the process when you're establishing the health and safety management system. So management needs to make sure that there's a process of involving the workforce when establishing your health and safety management system. The sixth clause, as you can see, it has two subclauses, 6.1 and 6.2, and then there are further subclauses to 6.1, and there are four subclauses. This is one of the most critical clauses of the ISO 45001, which talks about the hazard identification and risk assessment. So you need to identify how many hazards, what type of hazards are there, and this may vary from industry to industry. So this is the key um, activity that is within 45001 that you need to perform, and you need to evaluate that what are the hazards that are out there in my industry, and what are the risks related to those hazards to my workforce, and how I can protect them. While doing so, I also need to consider all the legal and regulatory requirements that may be applicable to my particular industry. That leads me to start setting the objectives. How am I going to improve the health and safety posture in my organization? And standard requires you to establish objectives, what you are going to do, what you are going to implement, and what had been the performance of the health and safety so far, and how you are trying to improve on that. So standard requires you to establish objectives on all of that. Then we have the seventh clause, as the name implies. It's all talk about support, which in terms of resources. So the resources, besides the human resources, could be in terms of the equipment that you need to buy, personal protective equipments, any automation that you need to do. So any type of support that is needed to perform, to establish the health and safety management system, that is to be provided by the top management. So this particular clause talks about few areas in terms of having the trained and competent workforce, and wherever there are gaps, you need to fulfill those gaps and provide those relevant trainings to them to ensure that they understand the health and safety at the organization, and they are able to identify different kind of hazards at their workplace. You need to ensure the effective communication process internally and externally as well. And then you need to have a documented management system which will ensure that whichever documents you are developing for health and safety management system, they will all fall under the document management system, and they are all controlled documents. Again, as the name implies, operations. So whatever you have planned so far in the previous clauses, now this is the time to put them to practice and to start implementing it. So as you can see, the eighth clause, there are two subclauses to it, which is 8.1 and 8.2, and 8.1 is further broken down in four subclauses. So the key areas that are considered in the eighth clause is regarding the implementation of whatever you have determined in the risk assessment in the sixth clause. Now it is high time to implement all of that. And to do that, you need to consider that what controls you have considered in the sixth clause, and how these controls will be implemented, will be put on the ground in terms of the PPEs, in terms of the awareness, training, hot work permit, cold work permit, all the type of controls that you have devised in the sixth clause as a result of the risk assessment. This is high time to implement and to make it happen on the ground. Besides that, this clause also covers the management of change, which you need to control within the health and safety management system. And you also need to control the procurement process. So, the procurement process, even if you are outsourcing some of your processes, or if there are subcontractors working with you, or if you are buying some products or services, you need to evaluate the hazards related to that, and the respective controls needs to be implemented on the ground at the organization. Lastly, this clause talks about emergency preparedness and response. So, standard asks you to consider different scenarios, and vis-a-vis those scenarios that is applicable to your organization, to your geography especially, you need to prepare yourself for the emergency, and you need to do the exercises for those emergency preparedness and response plan. Then we move on to the ninth clause. The ninth clause has three subclauses, and I've further broken down the 9.1 into two subclauses, 911 and 912, to highlight the importance of the evaluation of compliance. This clause basically focuses on the performance evaluation. When you have evaluated the risk assessment, and when you have implemented all of that, then how the health and safety management system is performing. So the standard first asks you to monitor the health and safety at your organization, and then with respect to the monitoring, analyze that data, and you need to audit your organization. Remember, I told you that the audit will be focused between 4 till 10. So whatever you have implemented, you need to audit yourself before you call in the external auditors. So internal audit is a requirement of the standard. You need to train your auditors, and you also need to make sure that you are complying with the legal and other requirement that may be applicable to your industry. Lastly, the ninth clause requires the management to review the the whole health and safety management system, and provide resources if required, and ensure continual improvement within the process. Lastly, we have the 10th clause. And 10th clause, it basically talks about that there may be incidents at an organization despite of having health and safety management system, but the intent of the system or the standard is to keep it at a reduced level. So if it happened, you need to have a process to respond to it, and then do a root cause analysis and make sure that it may not happen because of the known root cause. So the intent of the whole standard is to keep it at a minimum level, to keep an eye on all the risk to your workforce, and that's how you are going to bring continual improvement within your organization. So that was a brief overview of the ISO 45001. Hope that will help you in having a basic understanding, and may also help you in deciding your next course of action, what you want to do with this standard. So I thank you all for listening till I upload the next video next time. Thank you.